Thomas Edison arrived in Menlo Park in the spring of 1876, moving from Newark, New Jersey. Here at Menlo Park, he really built an entirely new institution that was a laboratory with a little machine shop in it. And in the bottom floor of the laboratory building, which was 25 by 100 feet, 2 stories. In the rear of the bottom floor was the machine shop that included machine tools and a couple of machinists from his Newark factory. But upstairs he had a large chemical and electrical laboratory and really a place to just do invention, just do research. And so this really was something new.
One of the first things Edison worked on here was telephone technology for Western Union to compete against this upstart Bell Telephone Company. And Edison discovered that the properties of carbon enabled him to vary a current as the sound waves of your voice would move a diaphragm on a transmitter. And this variable resistance transmitter that Edison developed was a key to making the Bell telephone a commercial instrument.
Edison, as a telegraph inventor, thought about operators taking telephone messages. So he thought about recording the message, as he'd done with telegraphy. And in the process came up with the idea of putting a little needle on that diaphragm from the telephone and recording. Right behind me is the product of that, his tinfoil phonograph. He wrapped a heavy metal foil around the cylinder and it essentially works like a cutting lathe in a machine shop, right? Where basically the little needle on the diaphragm, as you speak into it, sort of embosses or engraves into the tinfoil, causes the sound waves to be embossed in a sense, and as you then replay this, it reproduces it through the same diaphragm. And so you can actually hear a recording of a human voice. This is the first time in history that anybody had recorded and played back sound like that, and it astounded people. People didn't believe that it could be done initially, and especially with such a simple device. But very soon, as more and more people began to have experience of the phonograph, they realized what an astounding thing Edison had done. The newspapers dubbed him the Wizard of Menlo Park, which became his famous nickname. As word of this new technology spread and Edison began to send phonographs overseas to Europe, Edison really became world famous overnight. So that fame then helped him to move on and be successful in his next venture, which was probably the most important thing that he did at Menlo Park, which was developing an entire system of electric light and power. Plenty of people had invented light bulbs, but Edison was the first one to realize how you invent a light bulb that would actually be usable every day and commercially feasible. And so by having it designed as part of this larger system, designing not just the light bulb, but the generator, the fuses, the sockets to hold the light bulbs and the fixtures, the meters to measure the electricity so he could charge for it, of course, Edison really revolutionized the possibilities of electric light and power. What began here because of the electric light system was the development of a research and development laboratory, this much larger scale laboratory, team research, developing a large complex system by breaking it down into its component parts and having teams of researchers work together on different aspects of the system, but also thinking always about the relationship between experimentation and manufacturing, right? And so it was important to understand what the costs of manufacturing, the costs of operation were going to be, because Edison was more than just an inventor. He was the first one to really see invention as part of a large process of innovation that involved not just the ideas and making something work in a laboratory, but figuring out how to develop it into commercial technology and then going ahead and marketing that technology and figuring out how to manufacture and market that technology. Edison seems to have abandoned Menlo Park mainly when he remarried. His first wife unfortunately died at Menlo Park in 1884, August of 1884, a sudden illness that nobody's quite sure exactly what she died of, but she died unexpectedly in August. This seems to have led Edison to decide to return to the laboratory. I think he took great solace in being back in the laboratory working rather than working as a businessman. And then when he remarried in 1886, he basically at that point abandoned Menlo Park entirely. The buildings were used for a variety of purposes, from chicken coops to housing for families. By the 1920s, they had been abandoned. There were pretty much just skeletal remains of these buildings.